Hi, Christian. Christian Watkins, welcome. So Christian you're currently in Washington, D.C. as part of the General Board of Church and Society. And it's such a privilege to be talking with you today. Thanks for taking time. So we were just trying to, before we began recording, we were trying to think how we first met, and we can't come up with it. I've known you for several years now, and I just so appreciate your work, especially related to justice and the current way that you're engaging with Facebook. It's just been inspiring to me. So thank you. And thanks for giving us some insight today into what you're doing at the General Board and also help us to have some insight about how we can be a part of what God's doing here. So all that being said, welcome to this conversation. Thank you. And let's just begin with this. So tell us a little bit about you and how you ended up working with the General Board of Church and Society, and maybe even what they do, because I think there are some folks that are watching that may not be as familiar with GBCS.
Gotcha. Well, first of all, thank you, Blair, for hitting me up and for engaging me in this conversation, especially for such a time as this. You know, the work is critical. But on a webinar that I hosted last week, yes, advocacy work, the work of justice, which we are all called to, especially being Christian, is hard work. But living in a racist society, living with racist institutions is harder. So I'm grateful to be a part of the work. I'm grateful to welcome other people into the work, to partner with other people in the work, such as you and your husband and all the faithful leaders of the North Texas Conference, and also the lady as well. I graduated from Perkins in, May of 2019? I forgot what month it was.
Right.
I have a hard time remembering what month it is now.
Yeah.
But I graduated in May of 2019 with my Master of Divinity from Perkins School of Theology. Had applied for the position and others. Had totally forgotten that I had even applied for this position. But after 2.5, almost 3 months of just wondering and waiting and being anxious on my mom's couch, helping her around the house, being unemployed, the Assistant General Secretary gave me a call and said, "Hey, look, we've heard some good recommendations of you, and we want you to be our fellow for a year." So, needless to say, I accepted the position, and here I am.
Wow,
now,
that's great.
Thank you. Now, the General Board of Church and Society, that's where a number of our apportionment dollars go from across the United Nation, go to equipping and educating laity and clergy all around the world to do justice advocacy work. Now, if you go to umcjustice.org, that's the landing page for GBCS's website. And from there, you'll see the priorities that we have, everything that's aligned with the social principles of the United Methodist Church, and the ways in which people can advocate and be engaged in those subject areas, from racial reconciliation and anti-racism work to environmental justice work to assisting or to advocating for poverty mitigation and specific, and also work specific to women, to justice for women. So there's a number of things there are a number of opportunities for people to be engaged in the work, but I was hired specifically to be get ready for the long title, Wendland Fellow for Faith and Justice, right? Good. So that's my specific title. And what I've been hired to do is enliven the Methodists from the North Texas and Central Texas Conference to do this justice work not just on the local level, but also on the federal level. Because there seems to be a disconnect with the understanding of local and federal politics, right? So we want people to be engaged on the local level, to be engaged with their city councils, with their sheriffs, with all their elected officials on the local level, right? Bringing the concerns of the community to the places of power, in order to move power in the way of justice, right? And so we wanted to pull those persons from the local level to connect them with the federal level elected officials, to bring local matters, to bring Dallas and Fort Worth and Waco and Terrell and McKinney and all those other areas, right? Bring their stories from the local level to the federal level to make sure that the people's needs are being met from the national perspective.
Wow, that's such important work. I mean, and what we were just saying, you started in September, and who would have thought that your year of fellowship would be what it is, which is this pandemic, and now this incredibly important moment in our history of protesting for policy change. So along that line, tell us about kind of what you are advocating for right now, or what our church and society is advocating for. What do you think we United Methodists should be focusing on right now with all the going on? Sorry, our recording kind of jumped there, but I think we're back. So yeah, tell us about what we should be focused on.
Well, as of right now, further examination of our social principles would give us a very concrete United Methodist foundation, a good Christ-centered United Methodist foundation in how we should perceive the world and how we should be advocating in the world for ourselves and for those who don't look like us and for those who don't who aren't like us, right? But me specifically, or the work that I'm doing specifically, I actually have 2 phone calls with Senator Quinn's office scheduled for tomorrow and Thursday in regards to immigration efforts, as well as healthcare equity. So some of the issues that I'm specifically calling on United Methodist Advocates for Justice, that's the name of the initiative that we created, to lean in on are healthcare equity, education equity on the K-12 level, and then also immigration matters, right? Because we know that while COVID-19 is going on, there's still racial disparities happening historically in America.
Right.
And so, like, this is the perfect time. COVID-19 gave us pause. I actually thought a couple of days ago, thought back to the beginning of this, like, Lord, what is happening to our world? So it seemed like something was happening every month, whether it was the fires around the world or COVID-19 or now the protests, what more? But I thank God for allowing us to live through COVID-19, because it gave us a chance to take pause, to be able to focus in intentionally on these issues of racial disparity, right? And so the whole world is seeing what Black folks in America have been experiencing since 1614, right?
Yeah.
But for the most part, going back to the advocacy pieces, we know that COVID-19 has revealed a lot of disparities in ethnic communities and minority communities. So while our border crisis is still happening, while people are still being denied asylum entry, or migration entry into the United States, they're still being kept in cages. Families are still being separated. There's minimal monetary support for those persons. And there's also being the wall that's still being developed on our southern border. So I'm calling on United Methodists from both the North Texas and Central Texas Conference to be in contact with their senators in the House of Representatives and representatives in Congress to advocate for the allowance of immigrants, the allowance of asylum seekers to be justly processed and have their cries heard, because much of the issues that they're running from in South America, in South and Latin America, are U.S. created because of bad policies and destructive policies and coerced policies that have been developed in order to puppet them in the ways that the United States government wants them to function, right?
Yeah.
So we're advocating for that as far as the immigration is concerned. And as far as healthcare is concerned, we know that Black women are disproportionately affected when it comes to maternal morbidity rates, right? Because I was listening to a TikTok from a doctor saying, hey, look, during this COVID-19 crisis, we've known that Black women are disproportionately affected because of archaic medical understandings that the medical profession still has going on now, where Black women have thicker skin and they have higher thresholds of pain and that kind of thing. So so there's not, so when a Black woman in giving childbirth, or even within the the 12 months after giving birth, right. When the Black woman says, I'm in pain or something doesn't feel right, the doctors often say, that's normal. You'll be able to fight through it. And then I think the statistic is 7 times out of 10, the woman ends up dying.
Oh my goodness.
Right. So there's a specific piece of legislation that's been introduced on the House side called the Momnibus Act of 2020. It's a comprehensive piece of legislation that was crafted by the Black Maternal Health Caucus of the United States Congress that addresses those maternal health issues. So that's another thing that we're advocating for. And also the increase in testing sites and free testing sites, especially in rural areas.
Yeah.
Wow. And then education and other pieces of advocacy going on. I can send you a list of different resources and organizations that we partner with up here at GBCS.
That would be great. Please do. We are all about what you're talking about. I mean, our congregation is so interested in participating in that work. So yeah, please let me know. And we also will visit the website, umcjustice.org, and we can participate in all the campaigns there too, I know. So thank you. I mean, this is so insightful. I am, every time I hear what the Church and Society is doing, it makes me proud to be a United Methodist, because it is really amazing. And for folks that aren't familiar, tell about where the building is here, where you are right now.
Well, I am literally looking at the Supreme Court right now. Yeah. Like, the Supreme Court is right next door. Yeah. The congressional building, the actual congressional building is right across the street. There's the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee office that's adjacent to the building. So I'm right here in the seat of power. Right? The building was built in 1926. At least that's what the cornerstone says. And it was purchased before the Supreme Court and the Capitol building were even finished, and built before this Capitol building was finished and the Supreme Court building was finished, so that United Methodists could have a watchful eye on democracy. That's the phrase that the original owners of the property.
I just love that. I love that. Yeah, these are my clapping hands on Zoom. So that is really great, because it really does drive home like that we are, that, Wesleyan theology, like at the very root of our core, it's a social gospel. Like we care, it's a social justice oriented way of being in the world. And so for the United Methodist Church to be right there in the mix of it all on Capitol Hill is really, really amazing. It's a witness. And that's exactly right. Can you say that phrase again? Right. Keeping an eye. How did you phrase it?
The United Methodist building is situated here on Capitol Hill, keeping a watchful eye on democracy.
Yeah, that's really good.
People, I've had the conversation with several United Methodists saying that, there should be a separation of church and state. Why do we have lobbyists on Capitol Hill? Why does the church need lobbyists? And I had to, pivot and say, look, we're not lobbyists. We're not lobbying for a specific interest, right? We're advocating for justice, for the things that Christ calls us to understand about him. Because if we can't love God, and we can't love ourselves, and we can't love each other, then all this faith, all this Christian talk, all this going to church, all this saying I'm a Christian, even me having the name Christian, is all for naught. So we're called to be in the world. We're called to be separate from the world. We're called to be separate from. We're called to acknowledge that there is a separation of church and state. But that does not preclude church people from being a part and monitoring the civil society of the world.
Yes, that's so good. So good. Okay, so last question. This is a pretty big one. We are a white congregation at Arapahoe, but we want to be anti-racist. I mean, that's what we want. On our marquee sign right now, it says, you know, it's not enough to be not racist. Become anti-racist. That's really what we're trying to do. And so we've been working on this for a while. But we need advice. We need guidance. So what advice would you give to us as a white congregation of how we can grow in our becoming anti-racist?
Well, the first thing I can say is thank you and bless you for acknowledging the fact that there is a step further to go. And we definitely welcome you into the work of anti-racism because it is critical, especially for such a time as this. That first step you've already overcome. You've acknowledged the need for your participation in society to be transformers of the world, right? One of the things Dr. Zan Holmes used to say is, how can we transform the world if we can't transform the church, right? So this transformative work has to be done is first at home. Like, what are we doing? What are you doing within your own families, within your own congregation, within your own community, to not only hear the needs, right, but to understand the needs, and then to find those persons who are talking about the needs and uplift them, so where they can be your leaders and you can walk with them, right? Because it does no good if you understand the need and you start walking on your own, right? You gotta go with somebody. The disciples were sent out 2 by 2. So that means that there's gifts that one person had that another person didn't have, and vice versa, and they work together for the good of the people on earth as it is in heaven, right? So, sorry, my preacher is coming out.
I love it. Preach. That's good. Thank you.
So for the most part, you all have already traversed the first hurdle of acknowledging the need. And then the second most critical piece is actually hearing and perceiving and understanding. And then once you get to that point, once you start educating yourself about the different persons who, the different works that are available, the different people who are talking about these issues that you decide to tackle, whether it be immigration, whether it be racial justice and equity, whether it be education reform, whether it be police brutality or policing reform in the United States. You know, you start to find those persons of influence and glean into what they've already written. And I can send you a list of books and movies to review, and everything. It's pertinent to different subject matter areas, but they're out there.
Yeah, that's great. We would take all that. Yeah.
And then there's local leaders that are actually leading the work too. The Dallas Black clergy. They are very instrumental in the policing reform efforts that are happening in Dallas. There's The Gathering. It's a womanist church that's led by Dr. Ireland Session and Camilla Hall Sharp. They're not United Methodists, but they are beloved by United Methodists. So, and plus both of them are true and near and dear to my heart. So I'd say, if you want to know about the Black womanist, the Black woman theology, and ways in which to traverse life and come alongside those women, please do go reach out to them. What's happening? What kind of connections do you all have with Warren United Methodists? What kind of connections do you all have with Church of the Disciple out in or some of the Latino churches that are in Dallas? You know, what kind of connection are you all leaning into within this United Methodist connection that we have already established? Those are the questions and ways in which I would, push y'all a little bit further.
Oh, that's good. That is so good, Christian. Thank you. And yeah, please send any resources you have, and we'll look at them. We will learn from them. And just, I can't thank you enough for you sharing with us. And also I have to say, like, I'm so glad you're there doing this fellowship, but I can't wait for you to come back to North Texas because we need your leadership here. And we would love to welcome you when you come back, come visit Arapahoe, and you'll be certainly well received. We'd love to learn from you in person someday. But this has been a real gift. Thank you for your time, and just God bless you in your continued work for justice. And we'll pray for you. We'll work with you. And we just want thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So thanks for thanks for being a part of that and reminding us of that today. So
it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to be in service and grateful to be part of the conversation.
all right. Thanks, Christian.